Hey everybody, I'm about to start a really big painting. The start of a painting is always my favorite part of the creative process. It's like starting a good book. You know that you're going to enjoy getting to the end, but you don't really know how it's going to turn out. And having that element of surprise ahead of you is just a really great feeling. So, I'm ready to put that first stroke of paint on the canvas. You can see here I have some ultramarine blue and some burnt umber mixed up to make a nice sort of dark bluish gray. I put a tiny bit of some titanium white in there with it just to make it slightly lighter than what my darkest value is going to be. And what I'm about to do is get started on the underpainting. The underpainting is probably the most important part of the painting because it's the structure for the whole piece. And what it does is it maps out the composition, where everything is going to go, the dark and the light values, how dark or how light something is going to be in relation to what is just adjacent to it. And as I said, it really is the structure of the painting. So let's go, let's get that first stroke of paint on the canvas. Okay, so I'm just using a little bit of some terpenoid, which is odorless mineral spirits, okay, on a nice big brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to block in those nice big mountains. Okay, so there we go. We've got our first stroke in. A lot of times I hear people say, oh, I'm always afraid to touch a blank canvas. I never feel that way. To me, it's like, oh, it's exciting. This is the beginning. So we're off to what I think is going to be a good start. And what I'll do is I will continue to block in the rest of the elements that are in this nice little composition, and start blocking in some trees and things down here. Much of this will at first just look very, very linear, but as I progress through it, what I'll be doing is adding some more mixtures of this same color in darker and lighter values so that it really, really does start to get a very three-dimensional look to it. Okay, so stay tuned because there's lots more to come. Well, here it is. As you can see, the underpainting is all blocked in. You can also get a better sense, I think, of just how big it actually is now that you can see the whole thing in frame. As I said before, it's 40 inches across by 5 feet tall, which is about as tall as I am. So it's going to be really, really big. And I think you can see, now that that underpainting is there, exactly what the composition is going to look like, how it's going to fill up the space on the canvas, and where all those beautiful dark and light values are going to come into play to make it look really, really three-dimensional. Now we have a lot of work to do on it, and some of the things that people often ask me are, why do I start on a colored background, which in this case I decided to make it a light purple, and why do I use an underpainting in just one color to get started? Well, the answer to the first question is you never want to work on a pure white canvas. I do a lot of painting outside, and if you're working outside on a white canvas, the glare is going to just be really, really rough on your eyes. You're not going to be able to see your colors. But even more important than that, when you get started, you want to be able to see the relationships of the dark, middle, and light tones right away. And when you start to mix your colors up, you need to have something to match those against. If you're working on a pure white surface, that's the lightest light that there is. You can't get any lighter when you're mixing your colors up, so you have nothing to compare it to. So that's one of the reasons that all artists will tone their canvas sort of a middle value color. I happen to choose purple, and I like to use all different colors. A very traditional way of working is to use an earth color like, oh, a burnt sienna or a raw sienna, a yellow ochre, but I like to have fun. I like to mix it up a little bit. So in this case, I decided to go with sort of a light lavender color, and that's just tinted gesso that I use to get it that color. Now, as far as the underpainting is concerned, you always want to work with a color that's dark enough to give you a range of values, because remember, that's what the whole purpose of this underpainting is to get those values established. So I usually try to pick a color that's relatively neutral. So as I said in the intro video, I mixed up some ultramarine with some burnt umber. I threw a tiny bit of some titanium, that's a hard thing to say, titanium white in there just to gray it down a little and make it just slightly lighter than what my ultimate darkest value is going to be. And as you can see, that's given me the ability to get everything placed where I want it to be on the canvas. If I need to adjust anything, it's really easy to do that now because I'm only working in one color. If you were to go down the whole path and get the whole thing painted and then realize, oh, wait a minute, I didn't really want that there, I wanted it over here. It'd be really hard to move something if you've already gone that far in terms of your color palette. In this stage, you can make adjustments as needed, tweak it as you go along, and it really does give you an advantage in getting to the end result that you want to have. Okay, so the next step is going to be to just start piling more paint on there. I'll start working in color next, and then the paints as I progress will just get thicker and thicker until at the end everything is just, got lots and lots of thick layers of paint, some palette knife work on there at the end for some texture, and that's a lot of layers that are going to be going on there. So lots to look forward to. Before I put any colors down on the actual painting, I always mix up the entire palette first. A lot of people ask me why I do that, and the reason is you really need to see the whole thing all together rather than mixing up one color and putting it on the canvas and then putting in the next color on. If you see the whole palette together, you know exactly how it's going to work when it gets onto the canvas. And you can see I'm using my digital sketch as a reference image for mixing my colors. Now if I'm working outside, I use whatever is in front of me as my reference. If I'm using a photo as a departure point, I might use that. But my aim is always to get the most harmonious colors possible on my palette before I even touch that canvas. So I feel like I'm at that point right now, so I'm ready to get started and start putting some color down. So I am ready now to start putting some color onto this nice big canvas. As you can see, we have the underpainting all blocked in, which I did the other day, and so that layer is now completely dry. And I always like to start with my darkest values. That's the traditional way of working. It allows you to get your darks in there so that you know exactly what the value relationships will be of your lighter colors against those darks. So the best place to start is just as I did in the underpainting, right up here in the mountains. And so I'm going to be blocking in all this nice purplish blue, sort of grayish tone that I mixed up along with all of my other colors. Okay, so I'm going to get that onto the canvas in all of these nice rocky mountainous sort of areas. Now I'll be putting all the other colors down next to it on this layer that's going to rest right on top of the underpainting. So you won't even see any of the purple toning color or any of this dark grayish color that I mapped in at the beginning. All the beautiful bright colors that I showed you in that pre-mixed color palette that I just mixed up, all of those are going to be covering all this up. Okay, so I'm going to get to work and I will come back when I've got some more color on the canvas. As you can see, I've got lots of color placed on the painting. It's about 95% done. All that's left for me to do is touch up a few edges and sign my name. I've got it loosely placed in the frame just so that I can see what it looks like, but in order to secure it, I have to wait until everything is completely dry. My client's going to be picking it up in a few days. She's seen it in person once, as well as one or two little photographs that I sent her online, so it'll be nice to see what she thinks of it when she sees the whole thing completely finished. Let's take a look at some of the details. Here it is viewed from across the room. The size of the piece is 40 inches across by 60 inches high. You can kind of get a sense of its scale when you look at it in comparison to the other two pieces that are on the wall, which are both 24 by 24 squares. So it's a big piece. It definitely commands a lot of attention in the room. So as we get closer, we can see all the palette knife work and the rich colors and all that expressive motion that you can get by placing really thick bits of paint next to one another with a knife. Well, now that this one's almost done, I'm ready to start the next one, and it's already set up on my easel. I would love to paint something for you. If you'd like more details, just send me an email and I'll get back to you right away.